You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Hey, we are back. We are talking to Saul Singer. Saul is a columnist and former editorial page editor at the Jerusalem Post. He's the author of the book Confronting Jihad, Israel's Struggle and the World After 9/11. He's written for the Wall Street Journal, for Commentary, Moment, and the Washington Post International blog. Before moving to Israel in 1994, he served as an advisor in the United States Congress to the House Foreign Affairs and Senate Banking Committees. Saul lives in Jerusalem with his wife and 3 daughters and is the author of Startup Nation. Saul, welcome very much. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And thanks very much for being here. Listen, let me just open up. The book Startup Nation really seems to be quite a success. And in the book, you attribute Israeli success to immigration, among other things. So today, we have Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is bringing a lot of Olim, a lot of new immigrants to Israel. Even today, are these people still adding the type of value that you were referring to in the book?
Well, certainly. I think that what we were arguing, by the way, I wrote the book with Dan Senor, so I'm the co-author with him, and when we say the importance of immigration, we mean the kind of cultural impact of a country that where almost everybody is either an immigrant themselves or their parents or their grandparents. So and what we're arguing is that immigrants are natural risk takers, and that it's very important to have, if you want an entrepreneurial society and culture, to have people who are willing to take risks. And so if you have a lot of immigrants, that happens. And in fact, there's another book out called Immigrants, Inc. that came out in the U.S. that points out that something like half of the companies in Silicon Valley were started by immigrants. So clearly, having a continuous flow of immigrants coming in the country helps keep that kind of immigrant vitality alive.
I gotcha. So Israel is certainly considered, and you argue that is quite an economic miracle. Is it an ongoing feature that we have, or are we getting to the point where perhaps we are more coasting along on our laurels?
Well, that's an important question. I think that one of the impressive things about the Israeli economy is that even though the whole startup scene is pretty young, it's basically really took off in the mid-1990s, that it survived very well the 2000 downturn, and now again the 2008 downturn performed very well. And so we're seeing sustainability. We're seeing how the types of startups change over time depending on what's in demand. Now there's more clean tech, and biotech is very strong coming up. So you're seeing that kind of resilience and ability to adapt. So I think it's healthy and a lot of potential for getting even better. I also think there are threats. I mean, we talk about threats in the book to the startup nation. We mention Iran, but the main thing we're talking about is, of course, the educational system and the need to improve that. We can't take for granted that we're going to maintain this niche that we have, which is a very difficult niche to be in, which is the high end of technological innovation. So we definitely can't take for granted where we are on that, but we have every reason to think that we can maintain it if we play our cards right.
One of the concerns that people raise, in fact, I was talking to my brother lives here also, he's a patent attorney, and in fact he specializes in biomedical devices. So we were talking about the fact that a number of the patents that he's seen or been dealing with from Israeli companies ultimately get sold to bigger companies, either in the U.S. or Europe, which seems like a huge benefit. It's a huge windfall for someone to sell a company for $50 or $100 million or more. But the fact is, at that point, then we lose that intellectual property? I mean, there certainly is talk of a brain drain or of Israel losing a lot of its intellectual capacity. Is that a concern?
Well, there's a big debate in Israel in the high-tech sector on this, exactly the issue of selling, whether Israeli companies sell out too soon, whether they exit too soon. And I actually just drafted, Dan and I are drafting the forward, a new forward to the Hebrew edition that will come out in a few months. And we touch on that issue because the debate is so strong here on that. And I think we're inclined on the other side in the sense that what I think sometimes Israelis miss is the importance of startups. I mean, they kind of take for granted that we're able to produce thousands of startups. And it turns out that's not so easy. It turns out that there are so many countries coming to Israel, so, delegations of people from Singapore, from, Korea, from all kinds of places, trying to figure out how to do more startups. So we, also if you look around the world, most countries, developed countries, they're good at big companies. They're not good at startups. We're good at startups. We're not so good at big companies. That said, I think it's also important to realize that, the company that many people point to as a classic of a kind of, we wish we had one like that, is Nokia. It's so much so that I call it Nokia envy, what people have here. And it turns out that Teva is actually bigger than Nokia if you look at market cap. So we have a very large company like Nokia, and we have, depending on how you count, we probably have about $10 billion plus companies in Israel, which is not so bad for a country this size. So it's not even so clear that we're so bad at big companies. Mm-hmm. We're just a small country. But on the question of the lost value, the question is whether there's more value in producing startup after startup than there is in building very big companies, which is what kind of everybody else is good at. Or is the value more in kind of sticking to our comparative advantage, which is the cutting edge of innovation, which generally happens in startups. And there's nothing preventing, in fact, it happens all the time, of people when they sell a startup to do another one. So it's not like these people disappear. It's not like the value, which is really the people themselves, disappears. And also, it may be a great idea to build multi-billion-dollar companies, but it's not the same skill set. We could be good at startups. That doesn't mean we have any idea how to take a company from $100 to $1 billion or more. The fact that we can go from 0 to 100 doesn't mean we can go to 100 to $1 billion. Other people are better than we are. And I'm not sure it makes sense for us to try, start putting all our efforts into getting that, going up to the larger company stage rather than building more startups.
Okay, we are talking with Saul Singer, who is a columnist at the Jerusalem Post and is also the author with Dan Sinor of Startup Nation. He's been talking to us about how Israel competes against the world and works within the world as being one of the sources of startup companies. One of the issues that I deal with, apart from being on the radio, I work as a financial advisor. I help people who are looking to invest. And a lot of times people ask me about investing in Israel, and I like to tell the story, and I certainly like to tell much of the story that you've told in your book. But the response that I've heard is they say, well, listen, Israel may be great, but really Israel's enjoyed billions and billions of dollars of direct aid from the United States over the years. Instead of saying that, it's the Israeli miracle or the Jewish genius or the military, shouldn't we just be thanking the U.S. taxpayers for giving so much money? Because if you just throw so much money at anything, you'll see some success.
Right. Well, I think there's a misunderstanding there because the aid from the U.S. is about $2.5 billion a year in military aid right now, meaning aid to buy American weapons, basically, because according to the law, it has 70 or 75% has to be spent in the U.S. So it goes right back to the U.S. most of it. But even if you just look at the quantities, the Israeli economy is on the order of $200 billion. We're talking about $2.5 billion. So we're talking about 1 to 2% of the GDP. If you cut it off tomorrow, economically, I don't think it would have a significant impact. Politically, it would have a terrible impact because the support from the United States is critical to Israel on the kind of political, diplomatic, military level. Just simply the support of the largest, most important country in the world is a very important signal vis-a-vis the rest of the region. So you wouldn't want to cut off the aid simply because it would send a terrible signal. But economically speaking, it would not be a big factor if you cut it off. And I don't think it's been such a big factor in the development of the economy.
Okay. One of the things that I understand is developing out of your book, Startup Nation, is Startup Nation Tours. Can you tell me what that's about?
Yeah, well, we had an idea that you could take the book and try to turn the book into a tour, a different way of seeing Israel. It's very exciting, the idea of trying to see the country through a different lens, and we're just getting it off the ground with hooked up with a touring company called Keshet. There's a website up called that's at startupnationtours.com, and it'll be very exciting to see how it goes. To see kind of the country through the eyes both of the book and new visitors. Seeing companies, but also just seeing everything about the country through the lens of innovation and so on, like the military, immigration, all these factors that go into what we talk about in the book. So you end up basically understanding the whole country, but through the innovation side.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like a great idea. I think it's also great to bring people. Your book has been quite a success. Certainly captured the minds of many, but do you think it's being only sold to the choir, or is it being sold to people who are really interested to find out what Israel's done?
Well, only if there's a choir in places like China and Korea and Brazil, and these it's coming out in foreign language editions in all those countries. It's already doing well in Korea, Taiwan, and just now started in China. I just got back from there. They're very interested in the book. It's going to be coming out in Portuguese in Brazil and Russian, in Arabic. The United Arab Emirates, an institute there is publishing it in Arabic.
Wow.
As I mentioned, it's coming out soon in Hebrew. And we hope more languages. And this shows that there's tremendous amount of interest in the Israeli model. We don't think that it's because of our brilliant writing that people are translating the book. It's because people are interested in what's going on in Israel. They want to learn how to innovate. They want to learn how to do what Israel has done. They think it's very relevant, and particularly the countries that are most hungry to grow quickly, we're noticing are the ones that are translating the book first. It's actually, we're not, though there has been some interest in Europe, we don't yet have German, Italian, French, Spanish. I think those languages will come, but it's very instructive to me that the first deal that was made for a foreign language edition was Chinese. Mm-hmm. Because that's where the hunger to grow, to advance, to learn is these days. It's kind of interesting to see that happening.
Okay, that is amazing. Saul Singer, I would like to thank you very much for joining us on the show. People who are interested can look at www.startupnationtours.com to learn a little bit more about the spin-off from this book. And I certainly wish you great success in the book, and it should be published all over the world.
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a great day now.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, Send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.